I knew my marriage was over the moment Liam looked me up and down across our marble kitchen island and said, "Stop introducing me as your husband. It makes me look like I settled." He expected me to cry. He expected a fight. Instead, I simply replied, "Good to know." What Liam didn't understand was that the connections, invitations, and opportunities he flaunted as proof of his success had never truly been his. That night, while he was busy networking at a rooftop lounge downtown, I sat at my laptop and quietly removed my name and my influence from every VIP guest list, corporate dinner, and elite social event he depended on. 2 days later, Liam walked into an exclusive Sunday brunch with his young mistress on his arm, wearing the confident smile of a man who thought he had everything under control. Then he reached his reserved table. He looked down at what was waiting on his seat, and suddenly he couldn't breathe. When someone spends years using your family money and your high-end social connections to build their corporate career, do you owe them a private conversation before you take it all away? Or is it perfectly fair to let them walk right into a social trap where their secret life is exposed to the very people they're trying to impress? Liam thought he was the one controlling the game because he was younger and climbed the corporate ladder fast. But he forgot who owned the ladder. I decided that silence was a much better weapon than a loud argument in our suburban living room, and I wanted the high society of New York to watch him fall without me saying a single word. Liam always cared about his image more than anything else in the world, which is why he started seeing Chloe, a 24-year-old marketing assistant who looked at him like he was a god. As they walked through the glass doors of the bistro, Chloe was wearing a bright yellow sundress, holding his hand tightly and looking around at the wealthy city investors who were already seated at the long mahogany tables. Liam pulled his shoulders back, ready to show off his new life, totally convinced that I was at home feeling sad and defeated in our empty house. He thought I was a traditional suburban housewife who would just accept his insults because I loved him. But he totally miscalculated how fast a woman can switch from love to cold business logic. As Liam approached the main table where the regional director of his law firm was sitting, his eyes landed on his assigned chair. Instead of the elegant, gold-printed couple's placeholder card that read Mr. and Mrs. Liam Vance, there was only a single standard card with his name on it, and resting right on top of his white linen napkin was a sealed, heavy manila envelope with the words Corporate Conflict of Interest Disclosure Form stamped across the front in bright red ink. His mistress, Chloe, tried to pull out the chair next to him, but she quickly realized there was no chair there at all, and the entire table of senior law partners stopped talking and turned to look at them. Arthur, the senior regional director, who had known my wealthy father for over 30 years, stood up slowly, adjusted his glasses, and looked directly at Liam with a look of pure disgust. "Liam, we were told your wife adjusted the guest list due to a sudden change in asset management, but you seem to have brought a guest who isn't registered with the firm's compliance office," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a cold, professional whisper. Liam tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, while his hand gripped the back of the single chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Chloe looked around the beautiful sunlit room, suddenly realizing that nobody was smiling at her and that she was standing in a room full of people who viewed her as a massive liability. Liam's phone vibrated loudly in his pocket, the screen lighting up with an automated alert from our private bank showing that his access to the primary corporate line of credit had been suspended due to an active divorce filing. He looked from his phone to the red stamped envelope on his plate, realizing that if he opened that envelope in front of his bosses, his entire career would vanish before dessert was even served. He had to make a choice right there in front of the most powerful lawyers in the state. Open the envelope and face the music, or walk out of the brunch and lose his biggest career opportunity. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have confronted him at home, or would you let his own ambition destroy him in front of his bosses? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. If you want to see how this psychological revenge plays out, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next big twist. Liam didn't open the envelope. Instead, he snatched it off the table, gave a fake strained laugh, and told Arthur there must be a clerical error with the catering staff. He grabbed Chloe by the elbow, pulling her away from the table so fast her yellow dress swished against the chairs, and dragged her toward the valet parking area outside the restaurant. He was swaying through his designer suit now, his phone buzzing repeatedly in his hand with text alerts from our smart home security system showing that movers were currently scanning barcodes in boxes inside our suburban home. He realized that while he was busy planning his grand entrance with his mistress, I was completely dismantling his entire life piece by piece. When Liam arrived back at our suburban estate 45 minutes later, leaving Chloe at a coffee shop down the street, he found the front door wide open. The grand foyer, which usually featured an expensive crystal vase and a custom-built oak table, was completely bare, and the walls were stripped of every painting my family had purchased for him. I was sitting on the very last piece of furniture in the entire house, a single leather armchair in the middle of the empty living room, holding a cup of black coffee, completely calm. He stormed into the room, his voice tightening as he threw the manila envelope on the floor, demanding to know what he thought he was doing. I took a slow sip of my coffee, looked up at him, and gave a very small, quiet laugh. "You told me I made you look like you settled, Liam," I said softly, my voice perfectly steady. "So I decided to remove the dead weight from your life, starting with my father's money, which happens to fund 80% of the active cases at your law firm." Liam froze, his anger suddenly turning into pure panic as he realized that my father wasn't just a retired businessman, he was the primary silent investor who had saved his firm from bankruptcy 3 years ago. By removing my name from the guest lists, I hadn't just canceled a brunch date, I had signaled to the entire board that my family was pulling every single dollar out of the business. Before Liam could even respond, a loud hydraulic sound echoed from the driveway outside the large front windows. He turned around and saw a massive flatbed tow truck backing up toward his custom luxury sports car, the one he loved to drive to work every day to impress his junior associates. A man in a high-visibility vest was already attaching heavy chains to the front tires, holding a clipboard with a repossession order signed by my family's estate lawyer. Liam ran to the window, banging his fist against the glass, shouting that the car was in his name, but he forgot that the lease payments were tied directly to the corporate account he had just been locked out of. As Liam watched his favorite possession being driven away down the driveway, his phone rang again, and this time the caller ID showed it was the human resources director from his firm. He answered it with a shaking hand, only to hear a cold voice telling him that he was placed on immediate, unpaid administrative leave pending an investigation into his corporate credit card expenses. The director mentioned that someone had anonymously submitted receipts showing that he had used the company card to buy an expensive diamond necklace for Chloe last month. Liam looked back at me, his eyes wide with fear, realizing that the trap had been set weeks ago, and he had walked right into it. "How did you get those receipts?" he whispered. Do you think Liam deserves to lose his car and his job for what he said, or did the revenge go too far? Let me know your honest opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video right now. I stood up from the leather chair, walked over to him, and handed him a small paper copy of a bank statement from a private offshore account he thought nobody knew about. "You aren't as clever as you think, Liam," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You forgot that the accountant who set up that secret fund for your weekend trips with Chloe is my first cousin." Liam stared at the numbers on the page, realizing that every single dollar he had tried to hide for his future life with his mistress was now completely frozen by a court order. He had spent 2 years planning his exit strategy, thinking he was going to leave me with nothing, but his own greed had left a paper trail that went straight to my lawyers. Right at that moment, Liam's phone started exploding with text messages from Chloe, but they weren't messages of love or support. She had just seen the news from his coworkers that he was suspended from the law firm, and she realized his luxury car was gone. Her texts were cold and angry, demanding to know why his credit card had just been declined at the boutique hotel where she was staying, and telling him not to call her anymore if he couldn't pay for her apartment rent next month. Liam stared at his screen, watching his perfect new life evaporate in a matter of seconds, realizing that his mistress only loved the version of him that my family's wealth had created. While Liam was processing Chloe's texts, a sharp knock echoed through the empty foyer of the house. A man in a neat gray suit stood at the open front door, holding a legal document in a leather folder. He didn't even step inside. He just handed the paperwork to Liam and stated that since the primary leaseholder, my father's real estate trust, had terminated the lease agreement, Liam had exactly 24 hours to vacate the property before the locks were changed. Liam looked around the massive, empty house, realizing he had nowhere to go, no money to rent a new place, and no friends who would take him in once they found out he was ruined. I walked toward the front door, pulling my designer trench coat around my shoulders, ready to leave him alone in the empty mansion. Before I stepped out, I turned back to look at his defeated face one last time. "Oh, and by the way," I said with a calm smile, "that big senior partner promotion you were expecting next week, it was never yours. My father only suggested your name to the board to see if you would become arrogant enough to show your true colors, and you passed his test perfectly." Liam gasped, his breath catching in his throat as he realized his entire career advancement for the last year had been a setup designed to test his loyalty. Liam took a step toward me, his hand reaching out as if he wanted to beg for forgiveness, but he stopped when he saw two police cruisers pull up to the curb right behind my waiting car. The officers didn't turn on their sirens, but they stepped out of their vehicles with serious expressions, holding an official warrant for questioning regarding the unauthorized use of corporate funds that my family's lawyers had filed earlier that morning. Liam realized that if he didn't cooperate, he wouldn't just be poor and single, he would be facing actual prison time. He looked at me, his voice completely tight, realizing he was totally trapped with absolutely no way out. Can you believe his mistress left him the exact second the money ran out? Is that what he deserves for being so disloyal? Tell me what you think in the comments section. Make sure to give this video a huge thumbs up, share it on your social media, and subscribe to the channel for the final shocking conclusion of this story. The senior police officer walked up the concrete steps, his heavy boots echoing in the empty hallway, and handed Liam a formal document that required his immediate signature. It wasn't an arrest warrant yet. It was a voluntary asset forfeiture agreement prepared by my legal team, stating that if he signed over his remaining shares in the firm's minor real estate holdings, my family would drop the criminal charges for corporate fraud. Liam's hand shook violently as he held the heavy silver pen, looking at the dotted line, knowing that signing this meant he would walk away with absolutely nothing but the clothes on his back. He looked at the officer, then at me, looking for even a tiny spark of sympathy, but my face was as cold as ice. With no other choice left and the threat of a prison cell hanging over his head, Liam leaned against the bare wall and signed his name on the document, his signature looking messy and weak compared to his usual bold writing. The officer took the paperwork, nodded to my lawyer who was waiting in the car, and stepped back down the walkway, leaving Liam standing alone on the porch of the house he could no longer afford. I walked down the steps without looking back, hearing his boots follow me slightly before he stopped at the edge of the grass, completely defeated. He had spent years trying to look like a man who never settled, and now he was a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. As I sat in the back of my luxury SUV, my lawyer handed me a tablet showing a live update from the law firm's internal network. Chloe had just been escorted out of the building by building security, her personal belongings packed into a small cardboard box because she was fired for violating the company's strict policy against receiving personal gifts from senior executives using corporate funds. She was standing on the city sidewalk, crying into her phone, probably trying to call Liam, not knowing that his phone had just been disconnected by the network provider because the bill was tied to the same canceled account. They both got exactly what they wanted. They were finally together, but they were both completely broke. Just as our SUV pulled away from the curb, a large white van belonging to a local digital media outlet pulled up right behind the police cars. It turned out that my lawyer had leaked the compliance audit to a business blog, and a young reporter was already stepping out with a high-definition camera. Liam tried to run back inside the house to hide, but the automated smart locks had already engaged, clicking shut loudly from the remote command my father sent from his office. Liam was trapped outside on his own front porch in full view of the camera lens, frantically kicking the bottom of the heavy oak door while the reporter started snapping photos of his panicked face. An hour later, Liam was forced to walk down the main suburban sidewalk carrying his single remaining designer duffel bag, which contained only a few casual shirts and his secondary laptop. He spent his very last $50 of cash on a cheap, noisy city bus ride that dropped him off outside a run-down two-star motel on the dusty edge of the state line. When he checked in to the small office, the front desk clerk did not even look up from a small television screen, handing him a scratched brass key with the number 14 stamped onto it. Liam walked into the dark room, smelling the faint scent of old carpet cleaner, and realized this was the exact place where he would have to start his life completely over. I looked out the window as the SUV drove away from the upscale neighborhood, feeling a massive weight lifting off my shoulders for the first time in years. I didn't feel sad about the marriage ending. I felt incredibly powerful because I had protected my family's legacy and proved that nobody could use me as a stepping stone for their own vanity. My phone lit up with a supportive message from my father telling me that the new international office in London was ready for me to take over as the primary managing director next month. I smiled, looking at the city skyline in the distance, knowing that my real life was finally starting without any toxic weight holding me back. The story of Liam Vance became a warning text among the elite circles of the city, a lesson to anyone who thought they could manipulate their way to the top using someone else's name and fortune. A few months later, an associate mentioned seeing a man matching Liam's description working a low-level desk job at a small suburban insurance agency, riding the public bus to work every single day in a faded suit. He wanted so badly to look like a man who never settled for anything less than perfection, and in the end, the universe made sure he had to settle for the exact bare minimum just to survive. My voice stayed calm as I deleted his contact number from my phone permanently, leaving him behind in the past where he belonged. Liam thought he was a genius, but he learned the hard way that you should never bite the hand that feeds you. What did you think of the way she handled the situation? Would you have done the same, or did she go too far with the corporate fraud charges? Write your final thoughts in the comments section below right now. Thank you so much for watching the entire story. If you enjoyed this high-stakes psychological revenge, please give it a like, share it with everyone you know, and subscribe to the channel right now for more intense family drama videos just like this one. Have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next video.